Hey, and welcome back to Not Easy Being Geeky, the podcast where me, Rachel, talks about nerdy. So previously we talked about Lord Olympus and why I love that series so much. And this week we are doing a continuation of our Ghibli series where we take a deep dive into Ghibli movies and why I love them so much. Also, update, I've gotten majority of my Studio Ghibli sleeve finished. Just need color now. Outline is all finished. I know you guys were wanting an update on that for my TikTok followers. Appreciate you guys. But this episode, we're talking about the Secret World of Arriety. Last time we talked about House Moving Castle, you guys really enjoyed that one, and that is probably my favorite of all time. So I'm a little biased on that one, but I do thoroughly enjoy the Secret World of Arriety, for different reasons. And so the Secret World of Arriety is actually a Japanese retelling of the children's novel, The Borrowers. So for people that have seen like the English American version movie of The Borrowers, that's where it comes from. It's an English children's novel. And fun fact, there is not just one English dub, but there is two. Um so there's the American one and then there's the one for England. And apparently the England one is actually more well received. Just found that out today. But so basically what the Secret World of Arriety is about is, like I said, these little tiny beings called borrowers. And what they are they're little tiny people that secretly live in the walls and floors of people's houses. And so the first thing I just want to touch on is this this movie is so beyond beautifully illustrated. It reminds me a lot in the way like landscaping of like Howl's Moving Castle, like how they paid so much attention to that detail, and Nausicaa, where like the nature is just so it's very well detailed. And it's so beautifully illustrated. I mean, that's the reason why I love Studio Ghibli movies so much. They are just so beautifully illustrated and they like make me feel calm and just a good like safe kind of feeling, you know? And so that's the first thing I wanted to touch on is just the animation is so beautiful. Studio Ghibli never like disappoints when it comes to that for me, and this movie definitely continues that. Another thing I want to touch on, the music, also very well done. Not your typical Studio Ghibli orchestral um kind of vibe, but turns out it's actually the reasoning for that is because there was a French singer named Cécile Corbel, who is a huge fan of Studio Ghibli movies, and she sent the studio her second album as a gift back in like 2009ish, and producer Suzuki listened to it and was like in love with it and decided to hire her to compose the film score. So that's why it has like a completely different vibe from like all the other um film scores. I thought that was really cool. And so, like I was saying with this movie, I really noticed that they paid so much attention to detail when it came to very little things. So, the first time I saw this movie, I instantly noticed like their house, Arrietty and her parents. Um the house is stunning. Like there's little furniture everywhere, and Arrietty's room is like stunning. It's got beautiful wildflowers everywhere and so many vibrant colors. And it's so cool because the more you pay attention to the little background details, you know what it reminds me of now that I'm thinking of? Um Howl's room, the first time you see it, where there's like just a giant mess of like all these random things. scattered throughout his room. It's very much like that because nothing actually matches. And that's because borrowers, what they do is they go into, normal giant people, which is like normal size essentially for us. They go into their homes and borrow things that are out of necessity. So like sugar and other food items and uh like things to help them get other things. So like tape or string or um like needles, things like that that someone wouldn't really notice has gone missing because it's such a little thing. Um and
It's such a little thing, but at the same time, for them, it's a
it's a
necessity.
yeah, exactly. It's something that they need to survive. Um and so it's really cool because you see all these random little things all kind of jumbled together to make a perfect home for them. And I thought that was really cool. So Arrietty is this like 14-year-old girl who is the main character, and it's getting close to her birthday, and she's getting to that age where she needs to start to learn how to do things for herself. And so her parents had promised her that this night would be the night that she would go out on her first borrowing with her father. So it's them to go explore and get things that they need. And so she goes with her father, and one of the first scenes you see is Arrietty is clearly sick of staying inside all day. She's out in the garden running around getting like little things, and her mother is not happy with this, and she's like, you went outside again, and she's like, I didn't let anyone see me. Well, turns out she did get seen, and it's by Sho, who is staying with his aunt because he is very sick and his parents work very busy jobs and cannot give him the care that he needs in this time before he has surgery. And so it's already kind of starting off a little seldom um, with this sick boy, and he catches a glimpse of her. And so she doesn't tell that to her mother though. And so she's supposed to go on this borrowing, and her father says there's a new being here. And obviously the mother's like already panicked. You could tell that the mother character is very like um anxious all the time, and um so she's worried because she's like, no, 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 you're definitely not going now. We don't know what this being is like. We don't know anything about them. And she's just like begging and begging them, like, no, please, you made me this promise, I want to do this so bad. And then her father kind of is like, yeah, okay, let's do it. He's really sickly, so, and he's also very young, so the kids tend to go to sleep much earlier than the adults, so we wouldn't have much to worry about. Well, everything kind of goes to shit because as they're out on their borrowing, um she does get seen by him again. And at first, the first time I saw this, when he sees her, it's very like, first of all, actually scary because the way that it happens, like you just hear like this clock ticking, it's very dramatic. And then they pan over and you see his eyes just like wide open. And I'm thinking, okay, is this kid one of those people that like freaking sleeps with their eyes open? Uh Cause terrifying. But also does happen. And I was like, okay, maybe she could still get away with it, cause maybe he's just one of those freaking people that like sleeps with their eyes open. No, he actually did see her. And so she's like trying to hide essentially, and he's like, no, please don't go. Were you the one that I saw earlier today? And then that's kind of like when the cat's out of the bag, her dad's like, oh, great, like you did get seen and you lied. Um, and so she just kind of like it doesn't do anything, and they leave. And unfortunately they lost a couple of the things that they really needed. So then fast forward a bit, and they're freaking out because now they're gonna have to leave because it's dangerous for them to stay in their home, which You can tell by the amount of things that they have in this home that they've been there for a long time. And not just that, but there were other borrowers before them that had the place that had clearly been staying there for a long time. And so it's kind of sad because they have to like pack up all their things and leave and find a new home because it's now dangerous for them to live there in you know, terror of being found. And so, Sho with his curiosity, he brings her the sugar cube that she dropped, and he's like leaves her a little note and says, "Hey, you forgot something." Um and she tells her parents like, "Hey, I didn't touch it though, but yeah, they definitely know we're freaking here. Uh there's no way we can get out of this essentially." And the mom and dad are freaking out, and Arrietty feels so incredibly guilty because she realizes it's her fault that they have to move, um, because of her curiosity, you know what I mean? So, she realizes quickly though that Sho isn't like a bad human, he just is curious. He's a kid. He wants to help her, and not in a good way, but he literally there was this beautiful dollhouse that has so much detail in it that is in Sho's room that he's staying in, which turned out to be his mother's. And her father had made it because he had actually made it for the little people, and he made it in hopes that they would use it, which is just, you can tell that they were just kind people wanting to help them, but no one ever actually used the dollhouse, obviously because they're in fear of their life. And so turns out that this little dollhouse had like every little working part in of like a real house. So it had like a working stove, and he had gotten someone to like handcraft all of these things so that way they could actually live there. He wanted them to be comfortable and to have a place that was like a real home without having to take anything. Um and so Sho takes the kitchen out of the dollhouse and like finds their home and like rips open everything, and like obviously he didn't realize it was going to fuck up the entire house, but he was just trying to help a bitch out. And he puts in the kitchen from the dollhouse to, give them something new. Well, obviously, this just terrifies her mom even more, and she's like, "That's it. We gotta get the hell out of here. We can't." Like they know exactly where we are now, and so Arrietty, again in her curiosity, goes to find Sho, and he again sees her, and he says, "Please don't go. I just wanted to help you." And she quickly realizes that he is not a bad person. As she's talking with him, getting to know him more and more, she finds out that he's very sick, and you can tell he's not a very positive kid because he's talking about how like, aren't you sad? Like, don't you ever think about how you might be like the only ones of your kind left? And she's like, no, that's a horrible thing to say. And you can tell that he's probably been dealing with this sickness his whole life. And in fact, they do say that, that he was born sick, and he must be very sad because he's probably very lonely too. Usually when you're sick like that, you can't be like exposed to a lot of, germs and things like that. So he probably didn't get to play much with like other kids or anything, and you can just tell that he's very sad natured. And so as they're having this like final like this meeting, there is someone who's named Haru, who essentially is like the maid of the house, the housekeeper kind of aspect to Sho's aunt, and she is very much like the villain in this, because she wanted to find the little people for quite some time. She had some like suspicions of Sho by the way he was acting, and she wanted to find them to get rid of them essentially. And yeah, so she can get some bank, um and prove that, she wasn't crazy and like making stuff up. And so she finds Ariety's mom and like captures her, and Ariety instantly knows something's wrong because she hears her mother screaming. And so then her and Sho essentially go out on a rescue mission to um rescue her mom. And it's just, you know, the whole story is very much like survival. And I talked about this before in Howl's Moving Castle, where there is always a moment of ma. And what that is like the quiet before the clap is how Hayao Miyazaki had explained it. That moment of silence and just reflection, which is why I love Studio Ghibli movies so much. I think sometimes people forget that you don't need constant action in a film. Sometimes it's good to just have something silent. And I love these movies for that because they really always take that little moment of reflection. And to me, it had to have been when just one example is when her and Sho are having like that conversation, because it's just so quiet. You see this beautiful field of flowers, and I mean just so much detail, like you see carnations and daisies and like all these beautiful wildflowers out in this field, and it's just quiet. And then obviously here comes the clap, which is Ariety's mother's scream, to break that moment of silence. Um Haru, she like calls these exterminators to basically try to prove a point here, like for them to find them. And so as all this is going on, Sho tries to distract her because she tried to lock him in his room so that way he wouldn't be able to like escape and like help her or anything like that. Which, how are you psycho like that? He's a sick kid. But anyway, sorry. I always got to go on one little rant in one of my episodes, guys. That was my one moment of anger burst. But anyway, freaking psycho Haru like locks this sickly kid in his room, and she boarded up the window so that way, like on the other balcony, so that way he couldn't come in. Little did she know that Arriety was with him, and basically she didn't know how many of them were there. She was hoping to find others, which is why she called the exterminators. And so Arriety is helping Sho get back in and break into this house, essentially, so that way they can rescue her mother. Thankfully, happy ending. Sho helps Arriety rescue her mother, but unfortunately, they do have to move. And this movie ends very much open-ended, but still to where you kind of can guess at what happens next, because Arriety and her parents grab as much as they can. They go to find other borrowers, because they had met one named Spiller, who had helped Arriety's father after he had hurt himself while trying to get some items. And he had told them that there were other borrowers out there close by, which only proved Arriety right, that she believed that there was hundreds of others of them out there. So there was nothing to be worried about. And so Sho and Arriety say their goodbyes, and he tells her, thank you so much. I will never forget you. And it's just such a sweet story. The way this ends is you see them going up this tiny little stream, and it's like in these gutters essentially where they're going down, and to them it's probably like it seems so far, but then you find out that it's actually just a couple doors down. And Sho says how the next summer he had found out that like his aunt's neighbors were complaining of little things going missing, and so he knew it was Arrietty. But it's just a very cute story, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really love the music in it. It's very well done, and it's just it's so calming, but like there is a little bit of, it's not like My Neighbor Totoro where there is basically no conflict. There is clearly like a villain in this aspect of it. But it was very well done to where it's not like the entire theme of, the movie. So it was just, I really do enjoy this. It is not one of my favorites, I will say that, but it is a good one. Um Definitely would recommend to for people to see it. But I will say, it did break an all-time record in Japan for a movie that 7,500,000 people saw this in theaters in its like first opening or something like that. That's pretty impressive. Um no, it's not too new. I would say it's not like one of the older ones like My Neighbor
Well,
Totoro.
isn't this one of
Um
the newer ones?
it could have been like,
Well, I was gonna say maybe
I
because
will say that, Studio
it's
Ghibli,
kind of like how
because,
episode
they
1
are
was when the
all
With
hand-drawn
Star Wars,
animation,
where
their
it's like
movies do
it's been
take
so
longer
long
to
since
come out.
a new
So
Studio
usually
Ghibli
there
movie
is
comes
some
out.
kind of build up to people getting excited to see them. So that could have been it. But let me see when this did come out. I think it was like 2000. I don't know. I don't want to say because I'm not confident. But I actually didn't see this movie until like recently, and I was like, well, maybe this would be a good one to do the next Ghibli series on, because I had not seen it. I have not seen every single Ghibli movie, contrary to belief, because I know I am the self-proclaimed Ghibli queen, but I have not seen all of them. There are quite a few of them. So if you guys have recommendations, oh, it came out in 2010. So it's been about 10 years now, since the film has come out. Very, very well done though. On Rotten Tomatoes, I always like to look this up out of curiosity, because I do know that every single one of the Studio Ghibli movies does have a very good score on Rotten Tomatoes. It had a 95. Just thought that was interesting. It looked like when they started, so that came out in 2010, then another movie came out the year after that, which was Up on Poppy Hill, and then just a few years after that, The Wind Rises came out, so they started to pick up on it in the later years. But the earlier years, they are pretty stretched out there. Um, but yeah. So I definitely would recommend watching this. It was very sweet, and very much enjoyed the music. Great choice. Guys, let me know which Ghibli movie you'd like next. I'm so open to your suggestions, which ones you'd like for me to dive deeper into next. This one I really couldn't find much like lore or anything because it was based on a novel already. It's not like Howl's Moving Castle, how even though it was based on a novel, um, you know, there it was very different because they had done a lot of cultural aspects into House Moving Castle that differentiated from the novel. This one sticked pretty like close to the vibe of it. So there really wasn't much like research I could do based on culture or lore essentially because it was based on a previous novel. So if there's any that you think would be interesting, for that kind of aspect, if you, since I know a lot of you guys liked that about House Moving Castle, please let me know in the comments of our YouTube channel. Um, that would be great help. I really appreciate that. And as always, it's not easy being geeky.